ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont. And you know me. I love I love Dune. I've talked quite a bit about Dune. I've watched all of the movies, all the TV series, and as soon as it's on console, I will be playing Dune Awakening. But well, maybe I should get no, I'm not gonna get a new computer right now. If I do get a new computer, it's not gonna be for Dune, it's gonna be for everything else. But I saw this article and it was hilarious to me, so I'm going to talk about it from Game Rant. It isn't my fault if you haven't read the books. One actor's return in Dune 3 won't be surprising to longtime franchise fans. I thought, oh, so the small tagline article was completely different from this headline. I haven't read the actual article yet, but Jason Momoa just dropped a not so subtle hint about the status of his Dune character, Duncan Idaho. But it is one that wouldn't and shouldn't move longtime readers of Frank Herbert's source material. Wouldn't and shouldn't? No, it won't, and it shan't. Excuse me a moment. Wow. So I just switched my fans in here, and I think this one's a little dirty. Kicking up dust. Jason Momoa played Duncan Idaho in Denis Villeneuve's Dune, the 2021 live-action adaptation of Frank Herbert's novel of the same name. Dune Part One, by the way, not just Dune. He's not in Part Two. Um, Duncan Idaho is House Atreides' ever-loyal swordmaster and mentor to the heir, Paul Atreides, played by Timothy Chalamet. So why didn't they say, well, they said Jason Momoa there. Never mind. In the 2021 movie, he is one of the few survivors of the initial Harkonnen Sardaukar, God, excuse me, ambush on House Atreides' stronghold on Arrakeen, only meeting his end after making a last stand against several Lasgun armed Sardaukar soldiers to buy time for Paul and his mother, Lady Jessica Atreides, to escape the secret Fremen outpost. Man, that is a confusing sentence if you haven't seen this movie or read the book or seen the other movies or the TV show or the miniseries, I guess. Dune Messiah, the third entry in the trilogy, picks up where now Emperor Paul, grappling with the far reaching consequences of the religious war waged in his name across the known universe. And from what I understand, they've already announced that Dune Messiah is just going to be called Dune Part 3. And then they're going to cram the entire Messiah book into one movie, which should be interesting. Um, First timers to the Dune universe who watched the first movie presumed that it was the end for the brave Idaho, especially given his absence in the sequel. What did I just say? But Jason Momoa recently gave a revealing hope. Revealing hope? That's a weird statement. Speaking on the Today Show, Momoa, when asked by a host if he'd gotten a call from the makers of Dune Legacy, responded first with a hint and an added caveat. Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to get in trouble or not, but it's the same thing like Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? If you didn't read the books, it's not my fault, right? He then hit the hammer on the head with the affirmative words. Yeah, I'm going to be coming back. Momoa stopped short of revealing the how of Duncan's return, but readers of Frank Herbert's sci-fi Naga, man, I can't speak right now, already have a pretty clear clue. In Herbert's second Dune novel titled Dune Messiah, Duncan returns as a Gola clone named Hate. Haight? I think it's been so long since I've heard the pronunciation of this. The beautiful thing about the Dune trilogy, I'm going to go on a little mini tangent here, is that Frank Herbert read the original trilogy for audiobooks. So I strongly suggest going and listening to them if you don't want to read the actual books, because you hear all the proper pronunciations of everything. I think every author should read their books at least once through so we know how things are pronounced and how words are meant to be said. Robert Jordan was one of the few authors that had the foresight to put an actual like glossary in the back with pronunciation guides, which enraged a lot of people because you read through a book, you think you understand how these crazy fantasy names are pronounced, and then you get to the back and you're like, that's not how I thought it was pronounced, but the author made it, so I got to go with it. But Frank Herbert read the original Dune trilogy for audiobooks, so we know, but it's been so long. Like that's how we know Muad'Dib. We know it's not Muad Dib because Frank Herbert in the audiobook said Muad'Dib. And I want to say this is um right, but it's been so long. Um I remember this word crafted by the Bene Tli Tlisuhu. Sluhu. I say I remember, but it's such a weird word. I believe it's a Tlizuhu, Tliju'u. I think that's it. I'm spending too much time on this. The Tliju'u, um, gene scientist, and gifted the Emperor Paul Muad'Dib the emotional importance of Duncan's return and the largely political and religious tone of Dune Messiah. There's an unnecessary description of the book. Just say Dune Messiah. Cannot be overstated. It goes the way of the books. The clone will possess all of Duncan's sword mastery and appearance sans his memories. Memories that included an intricate friendship with Paul and a close relationship with the native Fremen. However, Villeneuve has shown a willingness to tweak the source material in his adaptations, indicating that Duncan might be returning in a different manner and scale, say via flashbacks and visions. I hope not. I hope it's just straight up like the book. Although introducing the Bene Tlijuhu will be very confusing to people who haven't read it because they get a good chunk of description in the book. If the reports are accurate, Dune Messiah is already gearing up for production that will begin this summer, and many fans would hope to see Villanueva score a cinematic hat trick. Dune had been described as the hardest novel to adapt in live action, but the filmmaker proved that theory wrong by pulling it off twice. That's an opinion. Sorry, but the best adaptation as far as the books are concerned is the sci-fi series from the early 2000s. If you can stomach the early 2000s sci-fi special effects, it is the most accurate adaptation. It is three, I think, hour and a half long episodes, about 3 90-minute episodes, and it's a mini series. It's almost spot on for the books or the book, the first book. It's fantastic. The acting's actually way better than it should be. And I strongly suggest it. It's the most accurate as far as the books are concerned. They said it was impossible to adapt into a movie because the book is broken up into three separate books. They're called books in the book. The novel, I should say. The novel is broken up into three books, and that's what makes it hard to adapt is you have to tell three different stories in one go. Where television episodes follow the three-act formula because it's rapid, movies sometimes do, but movies usually have 4 or 5 acts because they have a longer time to tell a story. Or you know, technically Villanueva broke it up into two movies and they each have 3 acts, so it's 6 acts for one story. Oh, where was I? I'm rambling. He pulled it off twice. Save for any major changes, the third film in the trilogy would be likely the director's last, but fans could be almost assured of Warner Brothers' desire to continue the Dune franchise. Yeah, Dune Messiah is continuing it. Here, let me finish this before I rant about that. Still losing hands as capable as Villanueva's would be an undoubtedly huge loss for any franchise. His bow would be legendary, though, if it came with his eluded Academy Award for Best Director. His bow. Okay. Yeah. Dune will continue. They're doing the games. They're doing Dune Messiah. They're most definitely doing season two, probably a season three, depending on how far they get with the story of season two, how well it's received, if the writers are able to wrap it up with a nice, pretty bow, because they didn't wrap up season one. But I will admit, the last episode of season one of Dune Messiah got better. The show was pulling a Mandalorian effect. It was getting a little worse with every episode. And then at the end, it kind of plateaued or bottomed out, I should say, where it didn't get worse. It kind of stayed the same level and then ticked up a little bit in the finale. It did have a lot of issues, but they're cutting their teeth on new property that and new territory that none of them really understand. They're adapting the Son's books, which I've never bothered to read because to me, Dune ends with Children of Dune. That's where the story of Dune ends. The fantastic trilogy, stop it there. I didn't think his son needed to continue it, but I'm not the heir of the Herbert legacy, so. But yeah, I've spoken my piece about the movies, so I'm not going to continue on that rant. This just amused me because it's not just Duncan Idaho doesn't just get cloned or resurrected, as it were. There's a bunch of Duncans. Like it's more than one. And I wonder if they're going to address that at all. Probably not, because it'd be super confusing, especially without Children of Dune story. And if this movie does really well, there's just no way I don't see them trying to convince Villanueva to do Children of Dune. But that's a whole nother animal in and of itself. That book alone would probably have to be 3 movies, which Hollywood loves breaking the last book up into multiple movies. So I don't see why they wouldn't do that. But there you have it. Jason Momoa will be returning for what is currently titled Dune Part 3. And no, it shouldn't be flashbacks, in my opinion. I hope it's not flashbacks. I hope it's just the actual story where he appears as he should. What the fuck did I just click? Yeah, no, I don't care about that. Get out of here. But that'll be all I have for this report. This is your host, Belmont, signing out.